How do we turn down the temperature in this dangerously divided moment?
Right after the assassination, the central thing we heard from left-leaning students, right-leaning students, from students in the middle, was not we're going to back off from a conversation. It wasn't extreme anger. It was a desire to listen. I think what we have to do is show the American people that that's actually a revolutionary concept today.
Hey, it's Julie. Welcome to Uncomfy, a show about sticking with moments that challenge us even when they're uncomfortable. And I get it, nobody likes to be uncomfy. But I have learned from experience, and you probably have too, that sometimes a little discomfort has benefits if we can stay open and curious about it. And that is what we're here to explore. So let's get uncomfy. Today, I'm joined by Manu Meel. He is the CEO and co-founder of BridgeUSA. It's a nonprofit with chapters on 93 college campuses where students gather to talk about their political differences constructively. Manu, I'm so glad to speak with you today. Thanks for your time.
Julie, thank you for having me on. I'd say being welcomed on a podcast to be uncomfortable is exactly what we need right now. So I am ready to be uncomfy with everyone listening.
Well, let's dig into the big uncomfy thing that so many of us are grappling with right now, and that is the death, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the response and the aftermath, and how to grieve as a nation, and also how to respond in a way that's productive. So interestingly, Charlie Kirk, through his organization, Turning Point USA, was also focused on the same group of people, college students. Of course, we know he was assassinated on a college campus during one of his public debate interaction events, actually just a few miles from where I work here in Utah. So I'm curious what you have seen from college students in the last few weeks, the college students you work with.
Well, I think what made the tragic Charlie Kirk assassination so poignant, and I've been trying to really think about this, is twofold. I think one is a lot of people on the left underestimate how powerful he was as a figure for young conservatives in particular. And I think the second is that he was shot under a poster that said, "Prove me wrong," while he was actively having a conversation with a student. And I think the assault on Charlie's life was not just an assault on Charlie. I think it was a bullet and an attack on the very mission of conversation and dialogue, which is the thing that myself and my fellow young people at BridgeUSA have been advocating for years, frankly, but especially in the last 2 weeks. I think the reason why the mission of BridgeUSA, which is, as you said, to empower young people to engage in constructive dialogue, feels so resonant, is that I think there's a new counterculture brewing. And I talked about this in a few other spaces. But right after the assassination, we had our amazing chapter team contact chapter leaders from across the country, get as much information as possible from left-leaning students, right-leaning students, from students in the middle, students from across different geographies. And the central thing we heard was not we're going to back off from a conversation. It wasn't extreme anger. It was a desire to listen. And that desire to listen, I think what we have to do is show the American people that that's actually a revolutionary concept today. And it's actually courageous. And that's how you start to enlist people in this movement to listen to each other.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that you've been doing this work for quite some time now. So, I mean, in your heart of hearts, was this on some level, did it feel like a failure? That you've been trying to encourage on college campuses dialogue, and you know, whether you agree or not with Charlie Kirk's views or even his approach, like he was trying to encourage dialogue of some sort, and to feel like, and he was assassinated in the midst of it was, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of bridge builders who feel like if this can happen in this context, what are we doing?
You know, I deeply disagree with Charlie oftentimes on the ways in which he showed up to campus and the form and style, but I tenaciously respected his purpose. In fact, we had met a few times in the past, and the way I describe it is two rival sports teams, and not red and blue. Rival in terms of form and style, bridging versus ideological engagement, right? And in every one of those conversations, as I've listened to him over the years, the spirit in which he operated is sort of the same spirit that I think animates activists from across walks of life, and I think it's something that the left and right can unify on. The reason why I share that is because the tragedy of American politics is one in which we're an experiment where it takes a lot of failure to drive certain cultural revolutions. And this is the case with every social change effort in the history of this country. Frankly, this is how human beings at an individual level operate. I mean, how many of us have kids that talk about, man, if only they didn't learn by falling on their face every time? And here's the thing. Last week, I was in DC speaking to a group of philanthropists, and I do share one frustration, which is that the problem with a lot of people that support work around dialogue and engagement is that for the longest time, they've had this attitude that there's a lot of short-term threats, whether you're on the right and the left. I mean, folks that are listening to this can relate to this. There's a threat to free speech if you're on the right. There's a threat to immigration if you're on the left. There's a threat to identity, whatever the case might be. And so the threat is so urgent, we can't invest in the idea of listening to each other. And people asked me time and time again, what's the point? I would ask that person back in the spirit of being uncomfy, how's it going? And as it relates to failures at Bridgers, this is something that I really want to emphasize. And I mentioned this on our partner organization, Braver Angels is called, which is a great organization that you work closely with, as you know. And I said, what does it mean to outrageously bridge build? And what I mean by that is the problem with Bridgers is we're nowhere to be found when the controversy happens. When a protest on a campus happens, where is the BridgeUSA chapter? When a controversy in our community happens, where are the dialoguers? And the challenge with that is we never look at ourselves and see ourselves as evangelists for a cause. We see ourselves as picking up the trash of society. And that is not a helpful way to think about organizing and activating. So I think your critique is right on, but I think organizations like BridgeUSA are leading the way on this because I think young people have that attitude and feel.
I'm glad you mentioned outrage, right? Outrageous bridge builders, because you know that outrage is actually what sells out in the world today. It's what drives the algorithms on social media. It's the thing that kind of keeps people, listening and coming back to the same conversation over and over again. And who can outburn whom in our world. So, I mean, isn't dialogue like completely counterintuitive or just counter in general to the idea of outrage and kind of what works? How do you make dialogue actually clickable in a way that outrage is?
So every Monday, I host a podcast called The Hopeful Majority. I didn't want to host a podcast. I was a pre-med student. I started college 2017 as a freshman. My mom is still confused. The amount of times I get asked, why don't you be a doctor? These days I say, honestly, it would be easier to be a doctor. I have no interest in doing this work publicly. Why do I say that? It's because the fact is that in the attention economy, the battle space that we have to understand is one of outrage. But let's get a little bit more nuanced on this. Outrage sells, nuance doesn't. That was sort of one of my taglines that inspired this work. But in the last 2 weeks, the amount of coverage and engagement that our students have gotten, just for context, since the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, we've had 27 new chapter requests. Republicans primarily, actually, that are
new chapters that want to start a new chapter on their college campus.
And counting.
Wow.
For context, we had 94 chapters. Our vision is to get to 800. It's quite significant. It's continuing to grow. We've had people from all walks of life reach out to us. And we've had 3 videos in particular, and this is what I want to talk to you about as it relates to outrage, go not only absolutely viral, but they actually converted people where we added 4.7K new followers in 10 hours. So what does that tell me? Yes, the outrage industrial complex is real, but what actually drives people's clicks is not necessarily outrage. It is what is counter-revolutionary. What is different? What is unique? It's sort of the same impulse. I mean, you'll know this as a journalist that drives storytelling. Anyone can tell the story of a conversation, but the conflict is really unique. It's not that the conflict is inevitably unique. It's that the conflict is unique because conversation was the norm. But today, conflict is the norm. Conflict is boring. Violence is exhausting. And so now our opportunity is how do you capitalize on the psychology of the outrage industrial complex to channel that into bridging as a counter-revolutionary project. And lastly, I'll just say on this, Julie, is I know when people hear counter-revolutionary, what is this Marxist up to? Counter-revolutionary was something that Charlie embodied. All counter-revolutionary means is you're cutting against the grain with a disruptive idea. And what's hilarious to me about this very sad moment is the disruptive idea that I have is people should talk to each other. Who figured? But that's our opportunity.
Describe one of these videos that went viral and actually converted people. So what was it? What was the essence of it?
I want to give a big thank you to our lead content creator and marketer, Adam Calder, who has been working with our team. He was a president at the Jacksonville University chapter, a student just like myself, came on board full-time last year. And he had this really smart idea. There was a student at our University of Pittsburgh chapter, Julie, that was speaking to Charlie Kirk when Charlie Kirk and Vivek Ramaswamy came to one of their Prove Me Wrong events at the University of Pittsburgh. And the student, Rachel, comes up to the stage in front of Charlie and says, I disagree with you, but my friends are standing right behind you. I see that you're here for a desire to debate in the marketplace of ideas. And I lead an organization called Bridge Pittsburgh, which is a chapter of BridgeUSA. And my job is to disagree with you civilly. So while I might disagree with you, this is what we need. And that interaction just went absolutely viral. 40,000 likes on Instagram in, I think, 7 hours. 4.7 thousand new followers added. And if you go to the comment section usually around bridging work is, this stuff is nonsense. This guy, all he cares about is kumbaya. These are the activists of tomorrow. And that's how I think we're going to hack the algorithm. It's because people don't actually follow Outrage. What they follow is what is unique and different. And people for too long have taken bridging for granted.
What do these meetings look like on these college campuses then? A bridge chapter gathering.
This is how a chapter usually starts. One student, one faculty member, one student reaches out to us. They say, hey, we're incredibly passionate about building a chapter. We want to have dialogues and conversations. But here's the key thing. We want to build a culture of pluralism. So it's not just about, let's just hold a space for dialogue, conversation, let's debate each other. Like, how do we actually push this culture on campus, which is a different task?
And a culture of pluralism, I feel like pluralism gets tossed around an awful lot these days. What do you mean by pluralism?
3 things. One is e pluribus unum, out of many one. This idea that disagreement is actually plus, plus, plus. It is how you build a better union. 2 is that you can't have a democracy if you cannot talk to each other. It's that simple. And 3 is that a culture in which you have diverse ideas, not from the left standpoint of diversity, but a genuine mode of conservative, liberal, and across the board, you can actually arrive at net positive. And the best way to describe this is your family dynamics. Think about a Thanksgiving dinner table. When the crazy uncle from the left and the crazy uncle from the right sit down, and if they were the only 2 voices there and you didn't have a culture of pluralism, it would resolve into a shouting match and everyone would give up. A culture of pluralism would be you sitting at the dining table there would say, all right, maybe you both have some truth. Let's build from here. That's what a culture of pluralism looks like.
Got it. So BridgeUSA begins with, we want to open a chapter here to encourage a culture of pluralism on
Pluralism
campus.
and bridging on campus. Student reaches out. What our amazing chapter team, which are ex-chapter leaders, they'll step in, they'll train that student across how to host these conversations, how to host these dialogues. They'll then work with a faculty advisor and administrators on campus. They'll recruit 5 to 6 other students. They'll do 3 things. The first is every 2 weeks, they'll host a discussion. It's not meant to be high attendance. It's just a place for people to just practice the skill, consistently show up. They have 4 norms of discussion. These norms of discussion drive how a student shows up in that conversation. 2 is they'll partner with university chapter leaders, presidents, college administrators, folks like yourself that might have radio shows and podcasts affiliated with their campus and really amplify their voice. And 3rd is what we call, outrageous bridge building. Like, how do you work with the Turning Point USA group on campus? How do you work with the college Democrats? How do you become the biggest lunch table in the lunchroom to actually drive these conversations? All we are doing is calling back to fundamental American ideas, but we're doing it in a robust and exciting way. And I think the American people are ready for that.
And what are these ground rules? What are the 4, what did you call them? The norms?
The norms
because it seems
of
like that's
discussion.
probably really important, right?
Absolutely.
That it's not a free-for-all when you show up.
This is all about social permission. We want a permission structure that guides our conversation. So if you show up in a room where the goal is combat or winning, which again was what Charlie used to do, and that's something that I think is time to now think about, is that the right approach? Our approach is, it's not about winning, it's about understanding. If you can understand why the person opposite from you disagrees with you, you understand at a values level how to reach the other person. And I think that is profound because frankly, at this time, no one is winning in 10-minute debates. It's just not going to happen. It's just not where we exist. So 4 norms of discussion were created in Berkeley in 2017 to drive these conversations. 1 is you listen to listen, not to respond. 2 is you respond to the argument, not the person. 3, which is very simple, is don't interrupt or have side conversations, which, by the way, in some ways is the rule that oftentimes gets enforced the most because it reflects trust. And 4, this was the most controversial one in the early days, but I think it's very powerful, is people represent only themselves, not broader social groups or identities. So if you're a student at BYU and you are a member of the church, you might show up in that conversation as a member of the church, but for the purposes of this conversation, you're here as Bob or Bill or Michael, not the representative of the entire church. And the reason why that's important is because too much and too often we take individual disagreements and broaden them out to groups. So I represent all Indian Americans in the United States. And then it just becomes polarizing.
So I guess the thing I've been wondering lately, Manu, is can any of this actually work to bring down the temperature and hopefully avoid further political violence like this if the loudest voices are not on board? You know, whether it's broadcasters, pundits, influencers, top political officials are interested more in winning than they are in understanding.
You're the expert here. Why do you think they're interested in that?
In winning, because I think there's a lot at stake, because I think politicians want to win elections. Yes. Pundits and influencers want to win clicks.
That's right. It's all about incentives, which means that you, the listener, have a much, much more powerful position in the equation than you think you have. They used to say, vote with your feet, like with your temperament, share with your temperament. Tomorrow, if the broadcasters notice stories like ours and yours and what people like Monica Guzman, Mari Giles, Brave Angels, other great organizations are doing across the country, saw greater attraction and interest, they would do that. It's all an incentive game, which is why recognizing that we live in the outrage industrial complex, which very simply means outrage drives money and influence, is not about actually ignoring the reality you just posited. It's one about how myself as a leader in this space can think about how to more effectively articulate and win in the zeitgeist by showing up, by having these conversations in the immediate moment. That's why we had, I think, 20 or so events planned in the immediate aftermath of the assassination. And this wasn't just after, this was after the Israel-Palestine protests. The second thing is you as the consumer control the incentive structure. All of that to say, you absolutely do not need the loudest voices on board. And the reason why you don't need the loudest voices on board is because the loudest voices actually represent a very small slice of the American people. It just happens to be the most active slice of the American people. I talk about this often, the power of 10%. 10% of all users on Twitter post 80% of content. 10% of the electorate shows up in each primary election, which means that in a town of 3,000 people, 300 of them are dictating what happens in our politics. So my job is actually how do you empower and activate the silent majority? And this is where I take a lot of inspiration from Charlie Kirk, is he understood how to do that, the conservative silent majority, because he faced the same problem as it relates to college campuses in 2012, 2013. So it's totally doable. It's a question of recognizing what your power is in this moment, and you are not powerless. In fact, you have the power to flip incentives to point towards pluralism and nuance.
Manu Meel is the CEO and co-founder of BridgeUSA. It's a nonprofit. They have chapters on 93 college campuses and counting, where young people meet to have constructive discussions across their political differences to promote a culture of pluralism. You can find out more at bridgeusa.org and also check out Manu's podcast, The Hopeful Majority. Thanks so much for taking time today, Manu, and for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Julian. Thanks to everyone listening.
And thank you for getting uncomfy with us today. Have you been interacting with someone in your life who sees the current moment or perceives maybe even the assassination of Charlie Kirk very differently? What is hard for you about that interaction, and what's working for you? I'd love to hear your story. I'm sure it's deeply uncomfy. That's what we're here for, to create a community that not only values pluralism, diversity of ideas, but also understands the value of getting just a little uncomfy. So email me at uncomfy@byu.edu. Let's inspire each other. Or you can connect with us on social media. We are at uncomfy.podcast on Instagram. We'll be posting clips of this conversation with Manu Meel, and we'd love to have you help us amplify those as well to get this message out more broadly. Uncomfy is a BYU radio podcast. Samuel Benson produces it, and the team includes Hyobin Kim and Sam Payne. Our theme music was composed by Kelsey Ney. I'm Julie Rose. Can't wait to get uncomfy with you again next week. Hey friends, it's Julie. I want to recommend a show your whole family can enjoy together. It's called The Appleseed from BYU Radio. It's a storytelling podcast where you'll find everything from tales about talking critters to heartwarming real-life moments. These are award-winning storytellers from all over the world who come to the Appleseed stage, and they share experiences about gut feelings that paid off, small acts of kindness, even the occasional mishap like dyeing your eyebrows the wrong color. So gather your family for great adventures that might just spark stories of your own that you can share with the people you love to create connection. Tune into The Appleseed on BYU Radio or listen on your favorite podcast app.